There's a lot of stuff to be aware of, but this is an excellent time for everybody to step away from the internet, to step away in some cases from watching TV for multiple days and or coffee. Do what you want to do, use what you want to use. But in my own personal life, at the moment, it is 6 days without a cup of coffee. So I've been fairly inactive on the internet this week, as I will be fairly inactive next week. Because when you eliminate one thing that could be overstimulating your senses, there are also other things that could go along with that elimination as well. So internet, screen addiction, and or coffee addiction. It was very important for me to come back to the internet, but after learning what I've learned about a great deal of things, I know that it's ultimately unhealthy in this day and age to be online full time. So think about some of those things that you could be doing when you're not online and when you're not watching Netflix. Okay? Now, there's a lot of crappy books out there, but it is important to be engaged in the act of reading. So over the course of the last week, I covered a few books, went into a few books. I wanted to find a passage from A Timeless Reality at random and bring that to you as well. Didn't want to be all official on this Sunday, but I did want to bring some fresh insights to you. But we're going to start there. That the world is corrupt, and we want to distance ourselves in as many ways as possible from the corruption of the world. And so in the modern day internet, for example, there is a lot of corruption. There is some good that can happen on the internet, but I see the internet right now as a tool in which I will share some ideas and information, but I'm ultimately not going to hang out in a place where people are becoming intoxicated and zombified in ways that they themselves may not see it. So it's important for anyone who's attempting to speak the truth to do their own cleanse from the internet and old screens for at least several days, with the exceptions of, say, taking care of business if they have to do some sort of business. But in general, I don't really engage with emails. I didn't even listen to my MP3 player, my headphones. I embrace the silence, even though our world really isn't all that silent, right? Haven't looked at any news whatsoever. What am I going to see? I'm going to see more threats from China towards the U.S., more threats from Russia towards the U.S., more threats of AI, more threats of the zombie apocalypse, and those tongue-in-cheek, hee-hee-hee-ha-ha articles, best places to go for the zombie apocalypse, rating Portland #1. I mean, completely ridiculous, completely asinine. And so too much stimulants like coffee, for example, can really amplify somebody to a point where they're making a lot of videos, as I'm glad to be back into content creation. But it doesn't have to be every single day. And it can become a habit even for people to watch certain people on a daily basis. What's really important is that we're evolving spiritually. And we can learn from different people. You don't need to learn from the same person. It's really important that you understand the spiritual principles that are being laid out, and that you also seek out a variety of people in your own life to be guides in your own world. Teachers, maybe even for a week. There may be somebody that you watch for a few days. You might come across a certain content creator and binge watch them for a few days and then get ultimately the essence of their ideas and or their teachings. They might be there to teach and not just be there to provide entertainment. And so I would say it's very important to use discernment right now with what you do on the internet, with the foods that you eat, which I discussed in a recent video, Eat Right for Your Type, right? It might benefit you to find out what blood type you are so that you are eating the right foods that are ideal for you and staying away from the foods that are bad for you. It's one thing to talk about the chemtrails, the fluoride in the water, and the 5G. It's another to take self-responsibility for our own health, for our own spiritual evolution. Because as far as I'm concerned, a lot of the people that are spiritual leaders in our world right now, not to bash them or to slander them, they're not looking hard enough at the evil of this world. They're not being honest about how evil it actually is. They're afraid of offending their flock or their clientele or people that they do business with. Yes, we do need to make money to a certain degree in this world, but oftentimes if you're going to speak the truth, you may live in poverty and float from town to town to town. The important thing to realize is that this is not paradise. What we want is to realistically reduce the unnecessary suffering so that we can go about our way speaking our truth. And a lot of people don't understand that it's not going to come from just one book, like the Bible or the Quran or some other text. And I see value in having the wisdom and insight to be able to grasp a spiritual essence from different faiths. So at the moment, I'm not really going to put myself in the box of any particular faith. I don't believe in all the things that Muslims, for example, believe in. But I do see there is a reason why people of certain faiths engage in certain things, to engage in the act of showing their faith to the Creator that is known by various names to various people throughout the ages. So there are certain customs and cultures that do certain things to show their faith, and that faith can be shown in a number of different ways. I don't think it has to be a specific verse and a specific language, but you're going to find in this world religious texts and scholars that say that's exactly how it comes about. And I don't believe it actually works that way. I'm just going to go at random to a page in A Timeless Reality. Even if you're in jail, in the bottom of the jail, and somehow you're hearing this message, pray for people. Be good, pray, and give that prayer and dedication, and that prayer is a gift to the soul. Your prayer and your good actions are an immense gift, and that's why the key for all our actions and why you read our daily practices from page 254. But definitely to clean the tongue, clean the mind, and then the divine remembrance and all the spiritual practices begins to clean the heart and seal the heart. That these bad thoughts that are moving in the heart want to clean them. Most have the thought in their heart and then they begin to voice it through their tongue. So the practice is to begin to stop that. Bring that fire down so that that thought is not even coming into their heart, because there are many beings that are picking up the signal of that heart. It is not something difficult. It is the vibration that is emanating, so they pick up that vibration to understand it. When you email, how delicate energy is, that if your email or text, the energy of what you were thinking will come to him before the words of the email have to be read. So means they don't need to talk to you, whatever you're doing. You're putting an intention into that. There is an energy into that. That energy is moving with that document. That's why that when people are angry or disappointed or upset with people, don't write anyone. Because what happens is the energy of what you're upset about will contaminate what you write. By the time it goes to the person, it can create massive confusion. And people will misunderstand each other and didn't understand because Shaitan, Satan, comes into that energy and through that text. So when people are angry, don't text, call. If it's voice to voice with somebody, you're disappointed at a friend, you want to talk to somebody, it has to be through the voice. Shaitan is less likely to play with that. But when you text somebody and you think it was mellow, they can pick up a different signal because Shaitan plays with them. But for the sheikhs and the understanding of energy, they pick up the energy of what people are even writing. So means keep it up to yourself, keep yourself in a state of goodness and happiness, and write only good things. If you start to try to use this channel towards bad, they probably put you on a spam block so that you can't come in and keep trying to put that type of fire into that. Again, reading from his book, page 255. So, adding on to that, yes, in the world of social media, there is a lot of bad mojo. There is a lot of misunderstanding. There is a lot of, in the book and on his channel, he talks about the whisperings of Shaitan. Okay, I've talked about the archonic interference in human affairs. Other people talk about a voice to skull technology, and in reality, we could be talking about the same thing. But as I said to you before, it seems like the majority of the human species right now, for whatever reason, is susceptible to these whisperings. That's why we need to be extra guarded in our personal affairs, not rush into risky situations. We should work to get to know people that we're going to be involved with on a deeper basis and level. Things have become very superficial. You should know what it means to be a good friend versus a bad friend, and how to identify a good friend versus a bad friend. By the way, the other reason you might want to take a break from coffee and or refined sugar and the internet is to reset your energy. So you might find yourself sleeping deeper. So for a lot of us, meditation could be something that's difficult, easier to talk about than actually do. But I would say that it's much more difficult on a whole lot of coffee. And it's much easier to get into that heart space. It's very important that it's not just live in the head, as a lot of self-described psychics do, but to be in the heart space. And that could be painful to get into the heart space. We might experience some back pain when we do so. We might also engage in other clearing exercises for our energy field. There are so many resources that you have at your fingertip to find someone that you like online that you can listen to and meditate to. There's a lot of popularity behind certain frequencies online. I would say natural sounds would be preferred. As I said before, maybe one of those Tibetan singing bowls, but I listen to some of it. But I also see the value and power in shutting off all music for several days. All coffee, all TV, all movies, sleeping, and then getting up and doing breathing, deep breathing exercises, maybe a variety of body movements, whether they be qigong or just simply something else. So cutting back on certain things, cutting back on alcohol, cutting back on nicotine if you haven't quit those things already. So in some circumstances, we need to embrace the light within and embrace the fact that we walk alone, because the herd is going to do what the herd is going to do. Today's society is less awake than it used to be. So you can be in a dense population center and you can build up your own spirituality without being off grid. And you can be off grid and be working on your own spirituality but still suffer greatly, even though you're off the grid. Having experienced both multiple times in travel, in a number of places. So I do want to talk about Portland affairs in the future, but it's going to be done on a limited basis. These modern day realities, some people use the word normies, that the normies seem to get along in so well. Dense population centers, high rent, high crime, high division amongst the people, a great deal of technologies. Some people literally thrive in those environments. Other environments also in which the women are highly sexualized. And I do want to say something about that. There's also the big time promotion of our society for men to play the game, which is for men basically to prostitute their own morals and integrity, to be somebody that they're not, to act like they have a certain car when they may have a rental, to act like they work at a certain job when they don't have a certain job in order to what? To get laid? And what is this whole thing about getting laid really all about then? If they feel like they have to play such a extreme game with people. Sure, he's going to be acting on his biological inclinations or directive. But in some cases, is it something more perhaps, such as energy vampirism? Do we not then have out of balance spirits right now on planet Earth that are not in control of their own energy, that don't know how to take back their own energy, so they stop vampiring on the energy of others? Yeah, so in the society, in this mainstream society, in which people think this is normal, many people think that it's normal to be the player, whether it be the female player or the male player. And on this notion of the dark side of MGTOW, don't you find it interesting that there isn't like a healthier place for men and women to come together to talk about how unconscious today's men and women have become, and why, from a spiritual perspective, not a misogynistic perspective, and not a what would be the equivalent of misogyny, but for men. So like a man-hating demeanor, which is popular with a lot of women today. It's really unfortunate. I wouldn't waste your time obsessing on when people are going to wake up. Just understand the real nature of human consciousness today. And do what you need to do to raise your frequency up to the point to where you are immune to some of the negative attacks, because we constantly, as human beings, are affected with influences from the unseen realms. That's how I'll put it in this context. And so we're all responsible for that spiritual hygiene, and you can do it in a number of ways. So yeah, on those days in which you're not going to be online, on Facebook and on YouTube, those are days in which you can be out walking, out getting more sun or moonlight, out traveling around. You could be reading books. This book I read over the course of a day, An Exorcist Explains the Demonic. So if you're looking for advice, yes, I advise you to live the healthiest lifestyle that you can in order to prepare for the future challenges, as well as to spiritually cope with the modern day and age. You don't want to end up on certain medications when you should be able to cope with those feelings a natural way. Likewise, we shouldn't allow ourselves to become so dependent on caffeine, nicotine, drugs or alcohol, or even cannabis. I do support the responsible use of most of those things. And so being close to nature, even if it is something as simple as having a few plants that you take care of outside your house, or with some full spectrum lights. For example, I mentioned getting some of those recently, and getting some aloe vera plants. So I would say that we can only take in so much solar light at a time, that it's wise to get out there when the sun is out, to get that sunlight, but to take breaks. Go inside, do some writing, do some reading, come back out, get some additional sunlight. You can use eye protection, head protection, but it's very important that you at least get some sun on your skin, or parts of your skin, or even at least shirtless for a period of time if you are in an environment where it's okay to do so. Because a lot of people are addicted to typical things, the typical things in our world to either wake up, get going, and then typical things to help them get to sleep. In some cases, burn themselves out all night long on streaming video content, when in reality, they should be working on their own spiritual development. And again, when one becomes more spiritual in certain ways, they may deal with certain spiritual attacks and continue to pray for divine guidance and protection as they attempt to raise their frequency above this world. And, on that note, There's a lot of people that have a lot of books about raising your frequency. And to them, it seems like it's just something that you reach through meditation, this frequency. But you can't raise yourself to a certain level of frequency if you have a certain level of immorality. So if you hate a certain amount of people on the planet, or if you hate yourself, or maybe if you haven't healed through certain levels of trauma. But I think the biggest thing is that there is a lot of discrimination and hatred that people have been taught in the Samara cult. And a lot of people think that they can carry that baggage with them while also becoming a more spiritual being of light. And I'm here to say that no, I don't agree with that mentality. You cannot do as thou wilt. Okay? We should attempt to be better human beings each and every year. And if possible, to create actual content that can encourage other people to join the light side as well. But I don't believe that there is any easy trick. Just wishing yourself upon a star that you can ascend beyond this reality without actually becoming a better person, right? So your deeds do matter. The things that you say, the people that you help, the people that you try to help. It doesn't just begin and end with staying away from murder and staying away from people that murder and staying away from people that support people that murder. So you want to create as much distance between yourself and those people. And you might find yourself in a world where there's nobody around you. Become content. Okay, if people in this world during the lockdowns allowed themselves to become zombies, to begin watching too much porn, to begin watching too much streaming video content, to be getting involved in the deeper, darker aspects of QAnon and other things like that, then that's their problem. But what people should be doing in a period in time in which they either have to isolate or are encouraged to isolate, whether they want to or not, the thing is, we should resist, in a true sense, what they call the pod reality, zombie apocalypse, to where we're sitting at our desks all the time, always looking for notifications, always living in this online world, thinking that we're so awake because we're surrounded by all these technologies, when artificial intelligence, in many cases, is dictating what we're going to see on those websites that we're on. And this is the way that it is on the modern day, in the modern day and age. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, if you have a Windows computer and there's a Start app, then it's basically suggesting content to you based on the things that you say in your private conversations or things that you write about. At least that's my experience, believe it or not. That's probably your experience as well. So we're no longer in the age of the organic man and woman, where the average man and woman that you meet is essentially good. It's quite the opposite. If you're going to serve evil, however, there's ways, I've told you this, there's ways for a lifetime in which you might be rewarded by Satan. So you might not actually do a specific sell your soul to Satan ritual, but through certain mentalities and attitudes, yeah, there are certainly some ways in which people sell their soul to Satan and lay down and worship the things of Satan. If not Satan itself, the satanic ways. And they harm people to serve Satan, not to serve God. That's not what God would want. That's not what Jesus would want. So there's a lot of people out here in this world that are running around hurting others and they don't care. They aren't at a certain level of soul voltage to even know that they should care. They've been programmed by the evil of this world that all that matters to them is themselves, and maybe in some cases, their relatives in their own flesh or their own tribe. Reality is, even if some people are tribalists, in many ways, when they're put into power, they do things that are destructive to their own tribe's survival. Through their own ignorance, through their own delusions, right? So a lot of people on this planet are being manipulated by lower spirits. And this is not something that's going to go away. Okay, we talked about this. Seems like the vast majority of today's New Age women keep promising people 5D. Without any call for people to increase their morality to even get to such a hypothetical parallel reality or incoming reality in which our world's problems are fixed for us. When has it really been encouraged by members of our community? Or to live sustainably, self-sufficiently, to have chickens, or to homestead in some other way? But again, many of you are in environments that are not entirely natural. And you can learn a lot of things from my experience on this planet. Not all these areas that are natural are the most spiritual. In fact, in some of these places, there's a lot of crazy. Beautiful mountains, beautiful rivers. You meet the people, oh man, it's over. So many examples. We will be talking for hours and hours. In some cases, I already did. I dealt with guns pulled out on me or being threatened with a firearm more than twice when I was in Costia County in 2013. When I was living in Costia County, after living in a major city before that, and Portland, Oregon most of my life, I knew consciously that it was about resetting my own energy. So even if you're in an uncomfortable off-grid environment, you still can achieve a certain level of spirituality, but you can absolutely be energetically affected by the toxicity of your off-grid neighbors. Even if they're 100 feet away or 200 feet away, if you know that they have certain vices, or if they have a few screws loose, and not only them, but the people around you, as was the case when I was living off-grid where I used to live. It was like I was surrounded by a hornet's nest of mental instability. You never want to say to yourself, as most of you live in urban environments, that because you're in an urban environment, that your spirituality is stunted. You have a lot that you can learn from. There's a lot of people that you can help. In a previous video, we talked about ways in which you can truth your community. You may want to pursue that as one of your forms of spirituality. So truthing your community, we don't have to confuse this with the truth movement or conspiracy theorists. Think outside the box. If you could help your community, if you could shine the light on something in your community, what would it be? What would it be regarding City Hall? What does your city need? Does your city have a certain amount of resources that could be funneled to a certain need? Is there another alternative for the homelessness crisis in your community other than the welfare state? Are there any off-grid areas for them to live in? Are there any changes to the land use code that need to take place? Some people do things with good intentions, and then some people come off as clout chasers when it comes to the world of YouTube, and people chasing for that extra click, people chasing for that extra subscriber. The world events that are taking place, and these groups are being manipulated by evil forces, because in many, many ways, the people of Palestine do not benefit from the actions of Hamas, and many people question even Israel's official story, just like many people question what they were told about 9/11, although not enough. And some people that go in that direction of looking at the truth for that day do not take a closer look at the history of the Middle East, at the meddling that the U.S. has played over many, many years, and the role that it's played in the destabilization of many, many countries, not just Afghanistan, but meddling in the affairs of Iran and many other countries. This is a long-term problem, and not just the United States. Also Russia, and also we're going to see more meddling from China. Again, China's coming out like the good guy, as it will continue to. It will win over the hearts and minds of many people with its free money. It even put out a free currency program in recent years just to give the people a taste. Leon said if they do occupy, they will bring a microchip loaded with $100,000, and the American people will line up and take it. It sure seems that we are on the path towards China establishing a greater foothold around the world through this trust that many people and many humans and many countries are willing to give it. So I will caution those against assuming that the current projects that it's involved in right now in South America, that it's involved in now in Afghanistan, that it's involved in now in parts of Africa, that they are ultimately honorable projects that are going to lead in the end towards greater prosperity and freedom for all the people. Nothing really in this world is free. And if we have any compassion for what they have done to their own people, to their own Chinese, not to mention the Muslims in China, what they have done to them. So knowing that, we need to come to terms with what's really coming. So while I'm aware of this, and I plan to talk about this, at present, I don't spend all day long tracking this, tracking the growth of China, tracking the threat of China, tracking the many threats from China coming to us. Same thing with Russia. I have seen enough this year. If people aren't awake now that something is coming, that these threats are escalating, then they can't be helped. Then a lot of people can't be helped. But yeah, when these things come down the line and our banks don't work and people don't eat, we could see extreme acts of violence from aspects of our society that are completely unspiritual, that don't believe in morality, that don't believe in God. When faced with our own imminent death, say a city gets taken out, some people may have it within them to make peace with God and this world. And while they're not going to lay down exactly and just die like that, they'll attempt to stay alive and or take their iodine and or stay inside and eat food. And maybe if they have enough food to share that with others, if they are able to. Most people are not in a situation where they're able to do that. But again, not everybody has to take the path of just losing their mind. And over the years of talking about preparedness and talking about the need to think ahead, it has been shocking in reality how many times I've just heard people talk about openly stealing from others and taking from others. So the reality is, when these things do come into manifestation, a lot of people are going to be dealing with those things as a major problem. Because unfortunately, while we're still on this planet in human form, we are still going to be dealing with needy, hungry, self-serving human beings, even in a crisis. And there's going to be some people out there that in some areas, they have, say, ounces of cannabis stored away, maybe certain food items, maybe certain alcohol provisions, maybe other drugs. And instead of those individuals using their resources to help the community survive, they will instead become micro-tyrants in that area and region. And maybe some individuals in the future might even use their resources to even violate women. And so, yeah, when society goes down the toilets, it doesn't necessarily become this beautiful, bright flower. When people no longer have those things that they're dependent on, that includes certain drugs, medications, cannabis, alcohol, a lot of people are going to lose their shit. They're going to lose it. But you need to develop your own spirituality wherever you are on the planet. And maybe in some cases, make peace with where you're at. Because in this modern day zombie apocalypse that I see, there is no escape. Not in any nice city. There's no perfect American city where everyone's truly nice. There's no perfect off-grid utopia where everybody's living perfectly, naturally, with the earth, without need for law enforcement, without need for a gun even, because they get along so well and everything, right? Even off-grid, you have murder, you have thefts, you have neighborly disputes, right? And you even have the reality of poltergeist activity, demons, ghosts, whether they be from the Native Americans that were persecuted, that were murdered, that lived up in those hills and places like that, in which I lived in Southwest Colorado, in which one person told me that it was straight up cursed up there. Or whether it be spirits from those Native Americans or natural earth spirits that may see some of those mountains as their own, that may or may not like humans or certain kinds of humans. Do whatever you got to do to cultivate that spirit within you. It's recommended by the Sufi to see our heart as one in which there is a candle burning, and that the world and its evil and its corruption wants to come, and fear and terror wants to come and blow that candle away. But through our own spirit and resilience, it is an eternal flame. It burns and it burns and it burns. And so through mindful activity, mindful speech, mindful morality, having ethics, right, we want to increase this spiritual strength around us and within us, to one that even affects the environment around us in a positive way. It could be a little bit awkward, of course, if you're tapped into some really deep thoughts and you're typing away and you're affecting the field of an entire coffee shop. It's kind of interesting for me to have those experiences. But it's rather to be on your own and in your own space of goodness, where you can at least trust yourself, than to be at the whim of any one of these unhinged individuals that we may come across in our life, and may in some cases make the unfortunate decision to let some of these possessed people into our life in a deep sense, right? This is an era in time in which a lot of people want to find their tribe. They don't want to be lonely. They don't want to be isolated. But in some cases, you do need to be isolated on your own mountaintop, so to speak, whether it be just by yourself walking in your own community or literally on a mountaintop, right? There is benefit in distancing yourself from the direction the herd is going on, right? If the collective was well, if the collective was centered, if the collective was collectively raising its vibration and frequency, our world would look totally, totally different. And it would not tolerate the many injustices that it does tolerate now. So think about that. Think about the need to be an independent, regardless of the world burning, regardless of the Antichrist taking over the world, AI taking over the world. The question is AI going to take over you? Is the Antichrist going to take over you? We ask for the world to wake up. We know the real state of the world waking up. Are we waking up? We are all individuals. We are, to a certain degree, connected through a collective hive mind. But essentially, that is the very thing that can pull us down into this matrix, the collective. If we want to pull ourselves out of the collective zombie apocalypse, then we need to access our divine spiritual gifts and powers and go outside of the herd. Okay, so going outside the box of our own prison cell, metaphorically speaking, is an inside job. And you're not going to get there from joining any group, any gang, and as far as I'm concerned, even any religion.